a few years ago, perhaps I didn't have the confidence to ask this of you. Perhaps I didn't want to do it because I hadn't done it myself. And yeah, I will say that I've had a very exciting and fun life. I've been able to do whatever I have wanted for a
Why are you afraid of that, of asking that? Like, that's the entire point of making an elite, like officer corps, as it were. Galt's created in the Ottoman Empire a new Young Turkish, whatever you think of that political movement, doesn't matter. He created a new political movement there, basically, which after the somewhat inevitable fall of the Ottoman Empire, that everybody kind of in this core understood already was going to happen. Not that they were defeatists, they weren't at all, but still they understood this was going to happen. They created a elite that could like instantly replace the old one. It's not the exact same. We are trying to push out a hostile external one. They were replacing a terrible old guard with a new Turkish young guard. This is what we also have been doing basically in Europe. We realize like we're under a hostile system. They indoctrinate us with false myth. We have to break those myths. We have to create our own. We have to create our own intellectual stuff, etc. Our own cultures even a bit. Again, because there is a purpose for MMA fighting and healthy life. It's called culture. It's how you keep young men around and stuff, but that's not the end goal. Individualism is not the goal. The goal is creating an artificial society that pushes out the external elite and is preferable to the populace, hopefully, eventually. And otherwise, we just have to be more ham-fisted, as it were, perhaps. And I'm not afraid to say that, because that's how this system got into power too, with brutality. And all nations are founded on extreme blood spilling. I'm not a fan of that, and we're not going to do that. Unless the enemy system attacks, of course, which I have stated before. Most civil wars are engaged by the ancien regime grabbing towards the rifle because they know they cannot win the conversation anymore, as it were. The political structure and conversation has been negative for them. Therefore, they grab for the rifle, which can happen here too in the West. You have to understand this. We have to be politically radical and honest. Just be honest about these things, right? Like, yeah, we're gonna die probably, right? Like, especially guys of our age probably will, and hopefully our youngsters can get out of it alive and make a new system. But like, I don't like, if you're in the millennial category, you're probably like gonna get fucked. You've been on the radar the longest. Let's just be honest about that.
Ultimately, if you look at a good vision of the future in 10 years or even 5 years, all of these political parties, they should be full to the brim of our guys. And it doesn't matter if you agree with their ideological background. Again, I couldn't care less what you think about the social democratic ideological history or anything like that. We need to stop looking at politics as some sort of static game of ideology. It's a game of power, and it's about who wields the levers of power. That's the only thing that matters. So you might...
To some extent, but you have to understand that, like, again, like, most of those political parties do exist, let's not forget, is to sniff out young men like us and to remove them as quickly as possible. There is a very, like, it's very difficult to get, for example, into here locally, VVD or D66, or really most of those. A PVV you could probably worm your way into. I've done it myself with the B%. And then and did certain things, and I can't say too much about this, but let's just say that I have successfully broken to some extent the power of the old Christian, which has forced them to evolve a little, just a little. And I've been only one person. This has been a large operation, but it was a successful one, and it forced them to abandon a lot of their boomer points, shall we say, and reinvent themselves, which forced themselves. Some people would say it's a bad thing in the end, you know, because I won't deny, we were just so in chaos. Because, you know, you're looking at the system, you're just kicking it to see, like, can I maybe get a fix from it if I just, you know, just grab the thing and shake it a bit, as it were. And did it work? I don't know. I mean, I would say it's been more positive than negative currently, but that's a very difficult conversation, to be quite honest with you, specifically in the Netherlands. But yeah, it's good to get in parties, and it's good to do things, and it's especially good to just stir up chaos. Frankly, I do think that's better. I disagree with the idea that you can really grab the lever of power, though. In most of these parties, I have seen it personally. But I do agree it's good to go into them as so chaos, frankly. Because what we want is we want the death of the old guard as a system, as politics. We want that whole mythology dead, and that has to be blown up minds, as it were, from inside out. That's what you, in my opinion, should be doing in their political parties and system. But again, I am more for sabotage than a belief that we can change it from the inside. I don't believe that. I don't believe that you can last and hold on to power. I've seen a lot of examples of that going wrong, and people basically having spent 20, 30 years of their life worming their way into something to get ousted and have accomplished absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, I at least detonated a bit of chaos.
Might say, oh, I don't want to go into this party because 10 years ago they were open borders fanatics.
Yeah, no, that's not. No, that it's not about what the party was. It's more that this open border party is trained by intelligence services, even sometimes, to sniff out radicals.
Yeah. Look at the EU and say, imagine what it could have been.
The EU is actually the one place where you cannot be easily ousted if you are one of those commission powers, because those are by the states parliament elected positions, etc. That's one of the few current positions that's much like a Soviet position. And in the past, some more nationalists, I wouldn't say our guys, just for example, Polish nationalists or something during the Soviet era, wormed their way into those positions. And they really may change, and that's because they weren't able to be ousted. Because the nice thing about democracy is that people get ousted very quickly, therefore the wider oligarchical system maintains itself more flexibly, whilst the more top-down authoritarian system has a difficult time removing people from the very top of it. So the higher you climb into those commission positions, the more difficult it is to get you out. And if you are going to do the infiltration bit, again, I think this has been played out already in both America and Europe. But try it anyway. If you know, whatever is better than nothing, I guess. If you do this, though, go for a Eurocrat position, the type that doesn't get removed. But more importantly, if you want my advice for the actual political position, go into a bureaucratic position. Look at somebody like Henry Kissinger. The man lived his whole life in different places, political places. He was one of the most political imperial managers for America. He was never elected to any position. He was one of those bureaucrats that got a position that through backhand politics. And basically those are the positions you actually want to infiltrate. They are more difficult to remove you from often, not always, but so often. In states, those are more interesting. Always go for the position in some theoretical work that starts at the very beginning of a process, etc. Those are the commissions that are actually interesting. I disagree that party politics is necessarily that interesting unless you want to sow some chaos, I suppose, which I have done again.
Imagine what it could be if we get all over Europe. All over Europe, we have our guys in Brussels. Yeah, imagine what it could be. Same thing on a national level. Yes, right now the Social Democrats in Sweden, it's full of anti-whites. Yeah, but what is stopping you? What is stopping 100 young patriotic men with good discipline to go into the Social Democrats to push it in a patriotic direction? What is stopping you in Denmark, Poland, Ireland, whichever country we're talking about? Nothing is stopping you from going into a political party. You don't need to agree with how it looks right now, because you can change it from the inside. You can bring it back to how it was. And I'm not saying that you should do anything revolutionary here. It's just a matter of bringing back these parties to how they were a few decades ago. So we're talking about politics.
Well, again, I have said this before, but they do cleanse our guys very efficiently.
So we're talking about voting. Voting is not the main issue. People can vote for whatever party they want, as long as we have our guys in all of these parties. 100 young Irishmen. We can talk about Ireland, because I suppose I have a good few Irish lads listening to this. We have Ireland. You can go out protesting every week. You can make a big fuss. You can.
That does matter, though. Like, don't tell me that doesn't matter. That does actually matter a lot, frankly. It brings about a whole cultural and political environment constantly.
Protest. It's good that you protest, don't get me wrong, but if you truly want something to change, yeah, then you have 100 young, sensitive Irish.
But like I don't understand. Like you can protest and go into a political party and also be an organizer and do intellectual work and do writing, and you can do all these things together. It's not like like whatever. You can mix and combine these things, and I disagree that you have to choose either one per se always.
Irish lads going into all political parties now, so that in 10 years you have in all political parties in Ireland. It doesn't matter how left-wing they are now, it doesn't matter how anti-Irish they are now. If you go in now, and then you will have across the board young men, or yeah, by then a bit older men, fully loyal to Ireland, yeah, then you can create change. But right now it doesn't matter in the least how much you protest, because the politicians who, they have a different moral framework, they have a different worldview, they will ignore you. They couldn't care less. As long as you don't compete with them in the institutions of power, they're not going to be afraid. They're not.
Sorel would disagree, like, no, politicians and the middle class too is very afraid when people start protesting more fiery and aggressive. And I actually disagree. I think that politicians have been intimidated, mostly on the middle right section, all over Europe, and they are forced to do, like, for example, the person who some people imagine would never talk about omvolking, replacement migration, that is, and just demographic disaster, etc., has been forced to do so because partly a lot of political pressure, which partly came from protesting, but also probably from some guys not having political power directly, but sowing chaos in his party, etc. Right? Like it's a mix of things. It's the constant attacks everywhere. It's making sure it's not just people commenting on internet, though. If you have the time, comment on internet too. It's the whole cocktail mix. These people have to be confronted every second, everywhere. So protesting is an essential part of this. It is actually, you are too nihilistic, and you do not know, I guess, politicians on a personal level more, and have not, shall we say, wormed in their ears a bit more, as I have at times. Especially on the middle class kind of petty bourgeois right wing. Those people are so easy to intimidate, actually. You can hound them even off platforms if you want, like happened to Graaf, that woman from the NCTV or whatever it is. No, like you can actually aggressively politically pressure and do it legally too. These people are not as strong as you think, mentally.
Gonna be afraid of, some violence in the street or some protests. It doesn't matter. They are afraid when you actually start competing with them in these institutions of power.
They are afraid of both. They are afraid when they see youngsters get in and be very radical and sow chaos, and they are afraid when then on top of that they see street protests, and on the internet they are never left alone, and the whole myth and narrative is being broken down, and their belief system is constantly berated. Again, it's the total mix. I disagree. It's annoying because I was expecting a full kind of admission to my more aggressive political worldview, I suppose, in this sense, but and that organization is what matters most, and that even if you are decentralized, you are not really decentralized, because if you are a quote-unquote white nationalist, whatever stupid term you want to call it, if you are this general ideology which has been set up over the last 2-3 decades mostly, though again there are people even before that, but mostly last 2 decades really, and the last decade has been very fiery. If you are this, then you are meant to organize in all forms.
Or we can look at academia for something else. Look in the US.
I know people who have also become academics, etc., and are pushing they would say, of course, like the enemy would say, white nationalist mythology, and I would say just reality. Again, it's the complete mix. We have to take it all over, and we have to pressure the enemy and hope that the oligarchy either does what most oligarchies actually do historically, which is falter, because they don't want to risk a civil war. But I expect that this one actually, again, maybe I'm too melancholic, but this one will probably grab for the arms. But I don't think they'll win.
If you're a normal white guy, they put a stop to you at the door, because they understand that the college, university, these provide you with a path to power. If you get into a prestigious college,
it is easier in my view, but maybe this is just specific to my locality, to get into the academic side of things than it is to get into the political side of things. But again, this could be a difference.
College in
due to locality.
US, yeah, then you will be set up, then you will embark upon the path to power. So they want to stop you there. So therefore you have discrimination against white men in the US. They don't want you to get to these positions of power. Now, something else I thought. And then you have dissident voices saying to have more children. You know, you want to save European civilization, have a lot of children. Okay, so what you're saying is basically that your children will take care of the struggle.
Partly. Not because I think we should do that to them, no. But if you think in one life generation you are still being this kind of hyped up skinhead who thinks like, oh, the battle comes, or like my life will be the deciding one. I mean, like some people say we don't have 20 years left, and it's like, maybe yes, you know, kind of. Again, I think it's probably going to start ramping up, but I fear that some part of this will be a multi-generational struggle. And therefore, you have children to also continue the work that the political and therefore partisan work. And like I don't know, I've said it before, like most millennials will probably actually die in a struggle. I wouldn't be surprised at this, because again, I think this system really will grab to the arms. And that's not nihilism, it's just pure logic, I think. You know, you can already see in England how aggressive they are. Therefore, I suspect that this happens all over Europe.
We don't have the time for that. We have about maybe 20 years, give or take, 20 years in Sweden, 20 years in Ireland, perhaps a bit less in France, perhaps a bit less in the UK. It depends, of course, it's hard to say, but we don't have the time to let the struggle fall upon the shoulders of our children. Now, don't get me...
I fear it just will. Like, I fear it will, it just will. We've already kind of, you know, failed. Now let's embrace our past failure. I had hoped that this was kind of also part of this video, but I guess not. We have already failed to that point. We are too unorganized, we are too individualistic, we are too obsessed with ourselves, and we refuse to submit and crown a king, as it were, a leader. Because that's the thing, right? Like leaders are crowned and made. They are not poofed out of the ground, like the next blah blah blah. No, that's not how it works. Like, you make that man. You produce him. Both by having children, but also having an intellectual organization that, like, how much time have I spent basically teaching myself because I didn't have a good mentor, as it were. There were good people around giving you advice, but it was mostly a work you had to do yourself in the early 2014, 15, 16 day. That sucked, man. I should have been like giving a quick course of like everything that I needed to know in like a video series produced by a large organization or something. Look at something like White Papers. White Papers is a very specific organization, but it does excellent work on its specific demographic data and solutions. Now imagine if we had a lot more professional organizations, small ones like these, and you compiled most of their works together. That would be a lot better than what I had to do with in 2015. Because then I had a lot of retarded libertarians that mostly were just infighting.
Me wrong, I do want you to have children because it's great for your own well-being, for your happiness, for your legacy. You will be able to get so much love, you will be able to give so much love.
Your legacy will also be war. Like, again, this is the point that we have to embrace, and I'm probably sounding like an extremely nihilistic person. Your children are going to be in a total war. That doesn't mean you have to stop having children and be nihilistic. I mean, I can accept this reality already, because it's just the reality I see.
This is a different topic. I do want you to have children, but don't think for a second it has anything to do with politics. It's not a political act to have children.
It is, because again, they are going to continue your war. Not even because they like it or because you want to force it on them. Even if you save Europe in 20 years, right? Like, even if you do this, guess what? Now they have the political work of rebuilding Europe. So they're still politically active.
That's a degenerate view of children. Having children, that's a blessing from the divine, which you should cherish. You should not view it as a political act. It's absurd to think that way.
But what if it is inherently a political act, not because I want it to be, but because the circumstances force it to be inherently a political act?
And also, yeah, you can have how many children you want, but if they grow up in an anti-white society...
They will. They will. Like, that's already... I grew up in an anti-white society. My sister is growing up in an anti-white society.
Yeah, you will set them up for a very dark life. So
it is, yes.
If we want the best...
It already is. It like doesn't matter. Several generations might even, depending on how hard and good we work.
For our children, and I'm speaking now to all fellow fathers as well, think
The thing is, like this I think is the difference between, I don't put value on suffering. Alright, like suffering is just something that happens. It's not bad, it's not, it's just, you know, again, I probably sound like an extreme nihilist again, but like, yeah, no, yeah, we're suffering already and we're gonna suffer more, yeah.
think about what sort of society you want for your children. Right
But life has to continue, like that's just not an excuse.
now there's only darkness, unless we can change things, unless we can get our guys into positions of power, so we can start the great remigration process, so we can have, you know, the luxury of not having to escort them everywhere again, which we had back in the day. Now, since I am a venerable ancient now, I might say the following, that your worldview, it looks quite different when you're 25 and when you're 35. So I understand what it's like to be in your 20s, you want to be a bit cool, you want to be a bit rebellious, you want to be...
No, that was when I was 16. I think it's more that I know there's a lot of you guys say that like around 25. No, I'm very tired. I'm a better political person too now.
a bit edgy.
I'm not edgy. Like I tire so much of being edgy. It's stupid.
But if you...
Memes are not funny either. Winning is funny because winning is funny. That's it. Like, and making your enemy lose is funny, and it's not even funny. It's just like it's the one good feeling left. That's all there is. It's just winning.
You are mature enough, and I can only hope that you are, then you understand that it doesn't matter how cool or edgy you are. The cool thing to do, the right thing to do, is to put a suit on and be as presentable as possible, be as sharp as possible, start competing for these positions of power.
Yes, I agree with this entirely, but again, in all positions, it's not just... It's also being an academic for some people, other people it's producing things, it's the cocktail of political activism and organization and being networked in a larger organization, which doesn't, that's another thing, people in the right is like, oh, we have to have a banner. It's like, no, we don't have banners, we don't have this. You do a specific work in a small organization probably, and you are part of a larger European-wide, including North America, organization inherently. Because you are not born an individual, you are born part of an organism, your volk. That's why and that's also why, like, again, morality aside, like you are a cell, maybe you're an immune cell. A lot of people in nationalism actually tend to be immune cells, in my opinion. And then they just want to fight like the external, right? But some people are more worker cells, right? And red blood cells, some people, whatever the red bone cells are, I don't know that English. Merg, yeah, you tell me. Right, like, let's look at that. Everybody's a different cell and has different functions. What matters is that you understand inherently you are part of the body. And the body doesn't need special flags. You are just inherently not an individual. You are always part of something. Be part of the body. Just accept it. That's what everybody needs to do.
Power. And yeah, you will have to suffer through, again, this boring political meetings, but it's for the greater good. So if you think it's not super exciting, then remember that this is...
I love political meetings. It's so fun. It's not boring, I can tell you that. I mean, if you're like me, it's not boring. It's the most fun part of my life, I'd say. Looking at like retards argue over nothing.
The path you have to take. It's not maybe as spectacular as some other paths, but it is what it is. You simply have to do it. You have to do it if you're serious about restoring order to the West. Now you might ask, why do I regret myself so much? What is my great shame? Yeah, it's because I should have known earlier. I should have said this earlier. I should have, instead of focusing on getting guys to go into the gym. Again, you can have the best physique in the world. You can...
And then do nothing with it, yeah. That's my point too. Like, and then not help me organize things.
Be the strongest guy in the world.
Whatever that thing may be. Again, it doesn't matter. A public event, a festival, it doesn't matter. All events are inherently can be political if you just make them right and make it matter, right? Like make it matter.
World, you can be the best fighter in the world.
Yeah, but it's also the other side, right? I could become the best intellectual in the world, and write on a small blog like a libertarian does. And not being in contact with other people, intellectuals, do not hash out a total vision and do not produce books and do not do this and do not have a media system. That's another thing. Like people need to create localized media companies. It's extremely boring to do. But look at the organization, therightstuff.biz. It's a radio program. It's always, a lot of drama, but I'm going to ignore the drama. They are a media company with a lot of influence. That is the type of organization a lot of European countries need to have also. And I hope to make that too. Somewhat. And that's just one part of the formula, but it is an extremely necessary part of the formula.
Instead of stepping outside of society, try to engage in society, with society. Same thing if we're talking about the law system. I would rather have our guys in these positions.
Yeah, our guys also need to become lawyers. Again, there are so many jobs to do, so much to think about that like I cannot list them because I literally, like an hour later, I'll remember like 10 more things to do, right? And all those people need to network together, be politically active together. And they also need to be capable of counting on, again, if you want to be a tough guy, at least be a tough guy for these organizations, so that when somebody of these organizations were to want to host an event of any sort, I don't know, fucking like a book club presentation thingy, whatever, the type, they do a lot of them in America and England. If that MMA guy then is there to help organize the event, then he is a good guy. If he is not there, then he is the worst guy, because that means he's been an individual. And that means he's not part of the body. The media company has to also care for their intellectuals. They have to invite them on, for example, more instead of just lollygagging all day, even though that's, I understand, is part of a product. Similarly, intellectuals have to organize towards, they have to, for example, write also just like literal manuals for political activism, for example. People who are very smart need to use their intelligence. It's like, come on, man. Like, everybody has to be connected as one body and help each other. That's the thing. Is it?
So all over the board, in as many institutions as possible. Same thing with the police.
Yes.
I want our guys there. Same thing in the military. I want our guys. And you can
again, I have an intellectual question over the military, because I want my guys in the highest positions and the therefore more authoritarian and authoritative and theoretical positions. I want my guy to be a police commissar. I do not want my guys to be a policeman. As a policeman, he just gets shanked by whatever, and he gets called racist one day and he's fired without a pension. Either aim high or don't do it, and that's with both military and police the minimum, I'd say.
So look at this. The police in Sweden, for example, or the military, they will screen very hard. They will screen to see, are these guys, is this potential recruit, does he have any sort of right-leaning opinion? If they detect that you have, they will put a stop to it. So be disciplined, don't talk about your views publicly. Now, of course, you might be in a position where you don't have any aspiration to go into these positions. Then you can talk as openly as possible. But if you have a shot, if you're a younger guy, I ask you, I've taken all of this heat over all of these years, so I will humbly request the following. I will humbly ask you the following, that keep your discipline, don't speak your mind, keep it within yourself, and be in a position where you can embark upon the path to power. That is the solution to our predicament. Now then, you might ask, how will I redeem my great failure? How will I redeem my great failure that I haven't said?
You don't need to redeem anything. I think I will end the video here. You don't need to redeem anything. I mean, does the Azov people need to redeem anything because they just did nothing but die in a useless war and kill other white people? No, because people are people and they fail. You know what I like about Jews? Yes, I said that. I like a lot that they have a system in which they constantly try balloons. They constantly lift up little things. They try everything. Every single thing under the sun they try. And they always have institutions, other institutions that are more established, back up these new attempts. And yeah, a lot of times they fail. And guess what they do? They don't spend a lot of time reflecting on how could we fail, or I'm sorry. I don't need your sorry. I just need you to do the right thing now, or try another balloon. Right? Either get with what works right now in your opinion, or try another balloon. That's it. I don't need morality, emotion, or any of these petty things. I don't need your guilt morality, right? Which is typical of Europeans, because you don't have anything to be sorry about. We have failed before, we're moving on now. There's no need for sorry, ever.